Okay, looks like we're good. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday, December 12th, 2019 meeting of the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please. Casey?
Commissioner Fisher?
Sella?
Here.
Commissioner Staunton?
Here.
Commissioner Brendel?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
And Chair Hovland.
Here. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this morning. Manager Neal tells me that on 7C, we have dealt with this matter in a prior meeting, so remove 7C, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
That's the multifamily affordable housing property tax relief pilot program.
Would someone make a motion to amend the agenda, meeting agenda, to exclude 7C and approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to amend the agenda by deleting 7C and then approving the amended agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the HRA on a matter of concern to them, other than what's on the agenda this morning? All right. Seeing no one coming forward, we will then turn our attention to the draft minutes. I think we've got the consent agenda, but Scott Neal wanted to make a comment first, I think, on 6A and B, on drafting minutes and approving claims.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. No, items, I want to make a comment, a brief comment about items 7A.
7A,
yep.
Okay. All right, I was wondering why you were pointing at the minutes this morning. You wanted to tell us how you did the minutes. And I thought, okay, is this some kind of refresher?
Some of my best work, yeah.
All right, okay. We've got a couple of items on the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the commission that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? All right, hearing nothing, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as shown?
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we are on to reports and recommendations, and Manager Neal has some introductory comments on proposed resolution 2019-10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the HRA. Just a couple of brief comments to add a little bit of context to items A and B. They are remarkably similar, and Ms. Hawkinson's presentation to you today, she's going to combine elements of her presentation to talk about both of these at the same time. We separated them to provide the council the opportunity to consider them on their own merits, and so that's why we're proposing them to you in two items rather than one. And I just wanted to give some explanation to that before we started our presentation today.
All right, very good. Thank you, Director Neal. And then Ms. Hawkinson, welcome. Nice to see you this morning. Our Affordable Housing Development Manager is going to make our presentation.
Good morning. A lot of this today is going to sound a little repetitive from our meeting on November 14th. And at that time, we had delayed approval of resolution 2019-10 for the creation of the Amundsen Avenue TIF district and modification of the Southdale TIF plan. Because at that meeting, I also was talking about using TIF financing for the acquisition of 4040 West 70th. And so at that time we said, well, why don't we delay this, amend the resolution, and include the modification of the TIF plan that would include 4040 West 70th. But as Manager or director, excuse me, Neil indicated, since then we split it up again. So there's been some back and forth going on that. So this presentation will be talking about both items again. As you see, the proposed Amundsen Avenue TIF district is where, at the 70th and Cahill area, that includes the Amundsen Flats, the 70, 75 Amundsen Avenue, and it would be adding to our 8 active TIF districts. So this would be in addition to that. The Southdale TIF plan, you can see on the slide, the map to the right, is a large area. And so this site, 4040 West 70th, is within these boundaries. The purpose for modification number 3 of the TIF plan for the Southdale 2 TIF district is solely to enable the use of incremental taxes collected from the TIF district to acquire a designated property for the affordable housing purposes. There are no changes proposed to the objectives, geographic area, budget, debt, or tax retention already approved for the TIF district. Specific modification to the TIF plan are shown throughout the document that was included in your packet. As we discussed previously, there are 2 types of funds within the Southdale 2 pooled funds. A portion of the pooled money that is governed by special legislation and what we refer to as regular housing pooled funds, where the parameters are that 20% of the units have to be affordable to households at or below 50% of AMI, or 40% of the units have to be affordable at 60% or below AMI. They can be used citywide, and there's a 15-year affordability period. The other is the special legislation pooling, and the parameters are slightly different. 20% of the units are at or below 60% of AMI, and in both cases that we're discussing here, 100% of the property will be affordable. There's a minimum of 25 years of affordability. In both these properties, we are looking at a 40-year minimum period. And the proposed housing does not generate adequate rental income to pay for the construction and operating expenses. So with affordable housing, as we've discussed many times before, there is a need for gap financing. And this is one mechanism to fill it. So Resolution 2019-10 establishes the Amundsen Avenue TIF district through the adoption of a new Amundsen Avenue TIF plan and modifying the Southdale 2 TIF district. The intent is to use Southdale 2 special legislation funds, so the special legislation, for the acquisition of this property, then to sell to MWF, the developer, at a discount. There are no additional fiscal impacts associated. The separate fiscal impacts will be provided within the plan under consideration. And I think we talked about this somewhat at the last meeting, where the initial intent is to just use pooled money and not to capture the increment that would be created by this TIF district, but we wanted to reserve the right to have you at a later date say, well, we may want to use some of that increment for some modifications within that area. But it won't be, we're not requesting it now for this site, for the acquisition or for GAP. The Amundsen Avenue estate is located within the 70th and Cahill Small Area Plan. The proposed Amundsen Flats development will be 62 units of affordable housing in a 4-story building. The Planning Commission has determined that the proposed development complies with the comprehensive plan. So with Resolution 2019-12 modifies the Southdale 2 district. The district is being modified to designate additional property to be acquired by the HRA or city for affordable housing purposes under the provision of the TIF statutes and special TIF housing legislation. It allows the HRA to use the pooled TIF funds for the acquisition of 4040 West 70th Street for future development of affordable housing. Since we met on November 14th, the Edina Housing Foundation has entered into a purchase agreement on December 3rd to acquire this site. They have until the end of February to complete all their due diligence and move towards acquisition. To reiterate what has been shared with you is the intention of the Housing Foundation is to acquire the property in order to fulfill some of the overall city development goals, including seeking a developer to build 100% affordable, age-restricted housing directly adjacent to a bus stop. This location is ideally suitable for multifamily affordable housing due to its location near amenities such as shopping, healthcare, and entertainment. The foundation will seek a development proposal with the following attributes, as you can see on the slide. It is zoned for up to 118 units. We'll try to minimize the amount of space that's needed for parking, yet still allow for parking of the people that live there. We are committed to having it adhere to the comprehensive plan, and then other city goals for our housing development. Unlike modifying the TIF plan for Amundsen Avenue, for 4040 West 70th Street, we do not know the precise development plans. Therefore, at this time, we are seeking to use regular housing TIF pool, not special legislation, to acquire the property. Once a development plan is in place, I'll return to seek authority to switch the money into special legislation. With special legislation, we needed to know more of what was going to be built, how many units, what were the taxes that were going to be generated. We needed a lot more detail than we have at this time. I was informed that we could make some really good educated guesses, but that's not really a good way to go about getting approval for a project or for using these funds. So with the regular pooling, we didn't need to know all the precise details. And so once we have that, we've been informed that we could switch the type of pooling money to be able to use the more restrictive, time-sensitive funds. Last night, the Planning Commission made a determination that acquiring 4040 West 70th Street for the purpose of creating affordable housing did comply with the recently approved comprehensive plan, in particular the Greater Southdale District Plan. The district plan strongly supports affordable and age-restricted housing to be developed within the Greater Southdale area. At the City Council public hearing next week, the City Council will be asked to make the following findings: that the TIF plan modification conforms to the general plan for development or redevelopment within the city of a whole, and that the TIF modification will afford maximum opportunity consistent with the sound needs of the city as a whole for development or redevelopment of the Southeast Edina redevelopment project area. Now, it's a lot of words. I totally broke the rules of PowerPoints, but this slide I wanted to just share with you because it's quotes from the Greater Southdale District Plan that really says that creating age-restricted, affordable housing is part of the vision of that plan. So I had mentioned that we're looking at using both the special legislation and regular housing. Special legislation for Amundsen Avenue, regular housing for 4040. So I have the combined table up to show that with each of these acquisitions that there is funding remaining in both pools. So we are seeking, and it's already been approved at a previous meeting, the 1.3 for Amundsen Avenue. What we're seeking for 4040 West 70th is $3.8 million. I wanted to also, this was presented at November 14th in the staff report, that 3.8 seems like a significant amount of money, but the size of the lot is larger than some of these other sizes, and when you compare it, the per door acquisition cost, it falls within range of other 100% affordable housing developments that have been recently approved by the city and the HRA. In addition, the staff report pertaining to 4040 West 70th talks about and not only modification of the Southdale 2 TIF district, but seeking acceptance of the term sheet between the HRA and Edina Housing Foundation for a $3.8 million loan to acquire the property, and authorization to engage legal counsel to prepare a final loan documents with the foundation that are consistent with the term sheet. I will come before the HRA in February with the final loan documents prior to when we would need to close on the property. So some of the loan term highlights are that it would be the $3.8 million loan secured by a non-recourse mortgage. It'd be 0% interest for 2 years with 2 one-year extensions possible. Edina Foundation will take the role to seek a developer who will comply with the comprehensive plan to build the affordable housing. Development will comply with affordability rules established by special legislation with the intent to be 100% affordable for 40 years. The foundation will maintain and manage the existing use until the residential development is ready to proceed. If a development does not move forward within an established time frame, the HRA can assume ownership and control over the property. So, are there any questions? That was a lot because it was combining 2 of the staff reports, but some of it we have discussed at length in the past, so I was trying to be brief.
Commissioner Fisher, I should say.
Thanks. So you alluded to something that was really my primary question coming in today, which is we're taking pooled money from the Southdale TIF district to do actually both of these projects or to make these investments. We would not have to, and there's a chart you had up that shows, total percent, I think it was 3.46%. That we would have across the city in that would be sort of off the tax rolls. It's probably not the right term I'm trying to use, but 3.46 of our tax capacity, there it is, captured, would be in TIF districts then. Is that after these 2? Are these 2 included?
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Nick Anhut from Ehlers & Associates, financial advisor to the city and the HRA. That chart is alluding to the captured value with the TIF district. So it would be existing districts on hand as of today, and then adding on the potential Amundsen. It does not reflect a potential project for the 40 site.
Okay. So for both of you might be necessary to answer. So the Amundsen project, that one we do, as I was looking through all the report, it reflects the fact that we would collect increment on that. Is that what we're saying today?
Chair, Commissioners, we could collect increment on that, and it was discussed at our last meeting that there was some desire to do so. In part, for example, the bike connection at the south of the property. It is the project itself, Amundsen Flats, does not need that increment. They just need the pooled funds. But there was expressed interest in capturing that increment for other enhancement project in that area.
And I recall that conversation, and I just want to make sure that I'm recalling it correctly, that per the rules, we can't take the pooled funds from Southdale to do that type of thing. We can spend it on the housing itself, but I mean, why wouldn't we just take, there's still capacity in the Southdale. Could we be doing, like, if we want to make improvements to the infrastructure around that site, could we do that versus collecting more increment?
If I can address the question directly, you would have every option to use funds from Southdale 2 to assist a housing project that qualifies under the legislation. Once you have created this TIF district, this special housing TIF district under the legislation and certified it, then you would have the capacity to use those Southdale funds to assist that project, whether it's for acquisition of the site, enhancement of the public realm, to assist the affordable units, or construction of those units directly. But the legislation requires that we create the TIF district. Now, after the project is built and you have not committed any of the potential funds that are derived from that project, the HRA would have the opportunity to decertify that district before any tax collections are made. You would also have the opportunity to collect and pool those resources to other projects. It would be wholly up to the purview of this body whether or not those taxes are continued to be collected into a fund and used for qualifying projects. Right now, we're creating the tool, the ability to do that. With the HRA's direction, as soon as this district is certified and that project is built, we can terminate it, decertify it, and put it back onto the general tax rolls.
All right, so this is taking a more holistic approach, call it more conservative, gives us the most options that we could have, but we can make the choice later to not. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that percent, 3.46%. We could do what we're doing, make some, take a vote a year or two from now and really not impact that 3.46% at all. But today, still having all of our options in front of us.
Correct.
Okay.
And I should just say that slide is based on the TIF plan and creation of a TIF district and a TIF plan. We need to provide information not only to the city council, but also to the county and the school district about the potential fiscal impacts.
Right.
And this is one of those statistics that are required under the statute to be shared. So that's where that came from. It needs to be disclosed to those bodies. But again, I'll just echo that, yes, you would have every opportunity to decertify or to turn back those funds in the future.
All right. Thank you.
And I wanted to add to Commissioner Fisher's observation that, yes, I mean, mathematically, it takes a lot to move that number much, that 3.46.
Thank you. Commissioner Brindle.
Thank you. A little education happening here, so I just want to clarify. So in order to use the pooled funds, we have to create a TIF district, but we do not have to collect on that TIF district. We could use the Southdale pooled funds to do the infrastructure improvements at the Amundsen site. We would not have to actually collect the property taxes for the period of that TIF district.
That is correct, and I should also just echo that, as of right now, we're not committing any additional funds other than the acquisition. So that would still be a decision made by this body,
Okay.
whether or not there's any additional contribution to that project.
Okay. But it has to be a TIF district in order to use the funds.
Under the special legislation, we do have to create a TIF district. The project does have to qualify under the legislation. The opinion of your development attorney is that means that the district goes through the full vetting process, gets certified with the state and the county auditor. However, it does not need to remain active for the full 25 years as long as we have adequate restrictions in place against or with the property owner that they're going to maintain the affordability. We don't have to maintain the TIF district commensurate with that period.
Okay, and if I understand what you said, then the TIF district would remain in place as long as required to acquire the property. After that, we can decertify it.
Correct, if that's the decision of the HRA.
If that's how we decide to go.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
May I add, and this may seem obvious, and correct me if I phrase this wrong, but we cannot use the TIF pooled funds without creating a district. So it's the flip side of the coin.
Right, right. That's why we're here this morning.
Yes.
Thanks for the reminder. Commissioner Staunton.
So just one other clarifying point. We often talk about pay-as-you-go, and that's not necessary in this case because we're talking about cash that we have already in the Southdale 2 TIF district. So we're not borrowing any money to do this. This is money that's already been accumulated through that TIF district.
Chair Commissioners, that's correct.
Yeah, I think it's a good clarification for folks that might be wondering what's the source of funds. Yeah. And Commissioner Anderson, any questions at this point in time?
I guess the only thing that I have in the back of my mind is the length of the TIF district. We're not establishing that today, I understand, but you referenced 25 years. So is that, it's really kind of arbitrary. We can establish the length of the TIF district to be 5, 7, 10, 15, 20. We're gonna move on 25 today. Is that correct?
I should be very clear, Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The affordability period is 25 years. The district itself can only last for 20. It's a
Okay, so
slight
we're
difference.
moving towards 20.
Right now, it's created for the full amount collection of, based on the project at hand.
Yeah.
As a potential resource that this body can utilize to fund affordable housing.
Yes.
You absolutely today, or after the public hearing on Tuesday, could designate that you want to certify it for the period of acquisition and development, and then decertify the district, never collect $1 out of that district. That is an option that's available. We are not setting that today.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank
could.
We haven't crossed that bridge yet. We don't need to. Okay, thank you.
I need one clarification. I may have misheard something here, but I thought early in the conversation from you, Ms. Hawkinson, I thought I heard you say that in order to do some of the public realm improvements that might be adjacent to the Amundsen property, we'd need to capture the increment to do that. And I thought I heard Nick say that, no, we could use pooled funds if we chose to do that, to make trail connections, for example. Can you clarify that
Chair,
for me?
Commissioners, either if the public improvement is directly related to the affordable housing, if it's directly related to Amundsen Flats, you could use pooled funds. But you have a choice. You could also choose not to use the pooled funds and use the increment instead. If there are other public realm improvements that aren't directly related, and I might need some clarification on this. No, that's not allowed either, for either source?
For either source, yeah.
Okay.
If it assists the affordable housing project, you'd have the opportunity to use either source of funds. It could either be cash on hand from the Southdale TIF district. It could be utilizing the future revenue stream from that TIF district. You have both options available as of this action. But that would be up to you to make in terms of a development agreement with that particular project and at the time that that development is occurring. We are not limiting your options by this action today.
All right, good, thank you. One other thing that was in the memo, and I think you had some input into this, Mr. Anhut, was pooled funds remaining. Let's assume that we make the HRA makes the investment in the Amundsen property, and then we make the loan with respect to the West 70th Street property. I think it was close to $4 million remaining, projected to remain, and then I thought I saw something in the staff memo about the possibility that based on what might happen between now and the end of the Southdale districts, that there may be an even greater amount in there that we need to determine how we're going to use for affordable housing purposes.
Correct. So Ms. Hawkinson has a slide on the table that shows a projection of what we think is going to be available. There are 2 years left of collection under the Southdale TIF district, not intending to extend that period of time. Even with this, there are millions of dollars available under both funds, if you will, both the special legislation as well as your standard statutory pooling provisions that are available without that legislation. This is a projection based on 2 more years of collection. There are cash and funds on hand to satisfy this project as well as the projects that you've committed to prior to this meeting. But we expect there to be more with the 2 more years of collection, and quite frankly, with the development pattern that's going on in the Southdale area, I would expect it to exceed this level. But this is our current projections.
Good, thank you. All right, I'm going to go back here. I was looking ahead on 2012. I'm going to go back to 2010. What you need there is a passage of resolution 2019-10, And that resolution would, as you stated in the staff memo, establish a Amundsen Avenue tax increment financing district and then modify the Southdale 2 tax increment financing plan to allow us to do the things we want to do. Is that a fair summary?
That is a fair summary.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-10?
So moved.
Is there a second? Got a motion and second to adopt Resolution 2019-10. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Then let's move on to 2019-12, which is a resolution that would modify the tax increment financing plan for the Southdale 2 tax increment financing district. In looking at the resolution, well, first of all, looking at the staff memo for 2019-12, you had actually two actions that you wanted us to take there. One was the approval of the resolution 2019-12, and then you wanted us to accept the term sheet, and then you said direct staff to advance, to get to work on this and get things accomplished. That latter element is in resolution 2019-12. I don't see anything in 2019-12 that deals with acceptance of the term sheet, so it seems to me you need two separate motions here.
Chair, Commissioners, yeah, in the past, when we've had an acceptance of a term sheet, it hasn't been memorialized by a resolution. It's been memorialized by the motion and action. So it was not included in the resolution. So
we
yeah,
could
two motions would
have a
work
motion.
for that.
Yeah, we could have a motion to approve resolution 2019-12 and accept the term sheet for that particular property in a single motion. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So is there a motion to approve resolution 2019-12 and accept the term sheet for the West 70th Street property?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion second to approve resolution 2019-12, which would modify the tax increment financing plan for the Southdale 2 tax increment financing district and also accept the term sheet involving that particular property on West 70th Street. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Good. Interesting work. Thank you. And thanks to the Housing Foundation for all the great work you're doing for our community. Yes, we have a few of the members in the audience this morning and some of the other folks that are part of our citizen committee that are working on housing affordability issues. So thanks for being here as well. Correspondence, I see a big red none. There's no correspondence.
No added emphasis there.
And are we going to have, oh yeah, Mr. Neuendorf, I didn't see a slip in there. So we're going to get a project update. Or do you have some executive director comments first? Or do you want to?
I'll talk a little bit more. Excuse me. I'll talk a little bit more about the next item, the schedule.
Okay.
Choice
I might
for
hold
you.
commissioner comments to the end and let Mr. Neuendorf give us a project update, and then hold your comments to the end as well.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. In your packet is a summary of each of the projects that the HRA has been involved in or been monitoring over the last year. We wanted to provide an update. We try to do it about quarterly. A few projects to note, and I don't have a formal presentation or images, but we have several online. But we're also to the point where you can drive to the site and actually see it happening. So at 44th and France, the Lorient apartments are under construction. They're on the second, they framed out the first floor and they're up to the third. They're starting to frame the third level of that building. The HRA got involved with TIF to fund those public improvements that they're building as part of that project. At 50th in France, the Nolan Mains project is just about wrapped up. Both the north ramp is finished. That was finished last year. The center ramp opened a few months ago. There's still construction workers out there doing some of the finish work, but we have a few dozen families that have already moved into that facility, and you can see them starting to build out some of the commercial spaces there.
You know, just a quick comment on that center ramp. I would encourage folks in our community to remember that center ramp is open. You know, it's now you can go in on Market Street. There's a parking sign that's the same as the one on the north and the south ramp. So there you've got that familiarity. But now you're going through a garage door and down into heated underground parking as public parking on that first level, and there's hardly anybody using it yet. I don't think any, a sufficient number of our residents have figured it out. So if you want to get down there for shopping at 50th and France during the holiday season, you make sure you remember to try to use that center ramp. I guess don't try. There's plenty of spaces down there. I think it's a wonderful amenity for our community. So thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, and also we finished up a few construction projects this summer using tax increment at Interlochen and Vernon. Those intersection improvements were funded with TIF. And at Wooddale and Valley View, that intersection improvement was also finished using tax increment. A few other projects that we're proud to have finished. The Lifetime companies have opened up their athletic center, their sports facility, and their co-working space at Southdale. Those just opened to the public last week. About 2 months ago, the RH Gallery furniture store finished, also on the Southdale site. Both of those projects were fully, well, they're in the Southdale district, TIF district, they're fully privately funded. There's no TIF monies that go to either of those projects. Also in that same area, a few other projects, staff continues to meet with the developers on them. The project formerly called Avenue on France at 6600 to 6800 France. Both that project and then just down the street, the U.S. Bank site at 7001 France are still under development review by the owners. So they found that some of the initial sketches that they put together and some of the initial approvals that they've already secured are not financially feasible. So they're retooling those site plans to find a project that fits. The HRA staff will keep our eyes and ears open on those. If the HRA needs to get involved or is asked to get involved, we'll certainly update you next year as we learn more. Down the street on France Avenue, 72nd and France, the project that was approved there, 7200 and 7250, is currently on hold. The developer is finding that with the amount of improvements that were approved for that site, they're having a hard time financing it. So it effectively is on hold until they figure out what the proper step is to move that site forward. But to end on a positive note, Pentagon Village on 77th Street, right by Highway 100. You've seen a lot of construction activity on that property this past year. This summer, the city or the HRA did issue TIF notes. So that's pledges to the developer. As of our review in June, they invested over $20 million just in site work alone. The public parking, all the new utilities, the road improvements, etc. In the last couple of months, they've started construction on the retail spaces. We're looking forward to seeing some exciting new retail open up in summer of 2020. Also recently, they sold the first pad for the first Marriott hotel. We'll see groundbreaking there in the spring. And they're getting very close, should be any day, quite honestly, closing on the second hotel, the Waterwalk Hotel. That would also be a spring 2020 groundbreaking. So there'll be a lot of construction there, seeing some grand openings in the new year, but also more construction. So those are the highlights of what we have been keeping our eyes on and getting involved in this year. And of course, happy to stand for any questions.
You might also comment on the Guitar Center site.
Sure, the Guitar Center site, that's on Hazelton Road. That was approved for a high-rise residential. The developer has their funding in place for that, and they are looking for groundbreaking in the spring.
All right. And then I think, too, worth commenting on is what you call in your chart here, 200 Southdale Center. I know the Lifetime Sports, Lifetime Living, or Lifetime Work folks are excited about being part of some potential Lifetime Living project above the old Herberger site, but nothing, as I understand, nothing's been submitted to the city yet in terms of what's proposed for that location, other than we hear general discussion about a grocery store of some type, the library, and potentially apartments above. Is that
That is correct, yes. The old Herberger site, it's been vacant since summer of 2018. So staff did meet with representatives from Lifetime and from the mall and from the county in months past. So we know there's interest. You may have seen images and concepts in the media. Staff is also eager to see those. But at this point, we have not received anything in writing. In the months ahead, we expect to. But if you want to see more, there's been articles in the newspaper, but that's what we're seeing as well.
Yep. And somebody told me there was one on Finance and Commerce this week as well.
Correct.
Yep. Commissioner Anderson, you saw that?
I confirm that, yes.
Okay.
I would just add, Mr. Chair, that what you see in the media will require some regulatory variances by the City Council, so you will get a chance to weigh in on this before it gets a building permit.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Mr. Nuendorf. And then, yes,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Fisher.
I just wanted to follow up on a couple items. So the Interlochen and Vernon intersection, which is funded through TIF dollars, also would not have been possible without that development happening. The Caribou and I can't remember.
Einstein.
Right. Do we have any sense, and I realize Chad's not here tonight or this morning, but do we have any sense about how much better that intersection, I'm hoping it's working better than it did before any of that development happened?
Anecdotally, we hear a lot of positive comments about it and not very much negative, but we haven't measured those changes yet from the before and after.
Yeah, I think it would be great to do that because I think we quickly forget some of these things, and sometimes development, we get criticized for allowing certain development to happen, but that one was really an essential development to allow us to get land that we never otherwise would have gotten to improve that intersection.
Agreed.
And then to use the TIF to actually make those improvements.
We
just kind of shoot by that stuff, and I think those are important opportunities. And my other just comment is when I went through your review, and thank you for all those summaries, you realize, 7,200, 7,250, we've all worked for some of us for years, before this. And I think it just goes to show how complex these real estate deals really are. Where you get the pressure on the one side about how much development you're allowing, and on the other, and because the perception is that we're just handing developers money in terms of TIF, and the reality is it really is a delicate balance. So I hope something positive can still happen there.
Commissioner Staunton.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, if I can just fill in on a couple of those. I live in that neighborhood near the Caribou at Interlochen and Vernon, and I have the same anecdotal responses from folks I know who live on Interlochen and try to get to Highway 100. They're finding that left turn to be a real advantage and a plus. I will say that the Caribou has been so successful that the biggest issue isn't the traffic, it's the parking there, that folks are wanting to go and use it. So the other thing I wanted to update folks on is I am sitting on an advisory group to the bridge replacement on Vernon. So the bridge is, Hennepin County is slating to replace the bridge over the railroad tracks in 2023, which sounds like a long ways away, but it will be on us before we realize it. And we're working on things like gathering engineering consulting assistance, and so watch for news on that project because it will be closely related to those intersection improvements we made on Vernon, as well as the remaining corridor, that Vernon corridor, consistent with the Grandview Transportation Study and the Grandview Development Framework.
Good. Thank you. All right. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. The second item under my comments was the approval of the 2020 HRA meeting schedule. We actually have two options in front of you. One is the conventional option of the second and fourth Thursdays going forward through each month with a couple of adjustments for holiday schedules. The second, or the other one, I'll say, is the once-a-month meeting schedule. We canceled a number of meetings in 2019, and that's, as we took a look at that, the frequency of cancellations, we wanted to take a look at whether we did need to book you for 2 meetings for the entire year. So really the question we had at staff, and I guess the question we'll pose to you is it better for you if we plan for 2 meetings a month and then end up canceling a number of them, or is it better for you if we schedule a smaller number of meetings and then just not cancel them? If we went with a 1 meeting a month sort of schedule for the HRA, there's a very high degree of confidence that we wouldn't be canceling any of those. But what is it like for you in terms of how you schedule your lives out into the future?
Commissioner Staunton.
So my take on it is that because these are the opposite week of council meetings, I think history has shown that sometimes one or more of us has to miss one of these meetings. And so the 1 meeting a month is attractive, but I wonder if 2 meetings gives us more flexibility to figure out which meeting we'll have the most attendance at.
Well, it certainly gives staff more flexibility,
Right.
I can tell you that. But our question to you again is it easier for us to schedule them and get them onto your calendars and then to give you a couple of days or a week notice that, hey, we're not going to need that HRA meeting, so you got found time now? How does that work for you? I mean,
Yeah, I'll tell you just from my own perspective, what happens is sometimes things come up from a family perspective or a work perspective that you're not going to be able to be there, and we can let you know in advance. And then my thought is, then if you have 2 options, you can at least sift through which option is likely to have the most members in it. I think ultimately having one a month makes the most sense, but how we get there is the trick.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I agree with what I think I just heard, which is we're better off having 2 on the calendar. And this last year, there have been a couple times where I knew out a ways that it was going to be a problem. I was able to let Scott know, and it was in enough in advance where we could decide to cancel that one, or just knew that we had enough other members that could attend. I mean, the reality is something's got to give, because we got meetings scheduled every week, and if you're ever going to take a week off and do a family vacation or something, just even that kind of thing is going to happen. So I guess my preference is just to keep the 2, so at least it's on our calendar.
Yeah, okay.
Because the other thought is, we've actually, it feels like we've hit a little bit of a, dare I say, a lull in terms of the what's coming at us on the HRA, but I anticipate that might not be the case through the whole year. So it's good to have those 2 meetings sometimes ready to go. Because the other thing that's important is I try to create a little buffer around this meeting, but the HRA meetings are more difficult because there's a work day that you're trying to balance, and sometimes that requires travel or whatever. So it's better to have 2 shorter meetings than one that can consume a good chunk of the day.
And a larger number of meetings gives us the opportunity to sort of spread the action items out so that we really don't take you past 9 o'clock very often, if at all.
Commissioners Brindle or Anderson, any thoughts?
I've been leaning toward 1 a month for the flexibility, more flexibility for me or us. But if we do 2 meetings a month, then maybe we say this is the meeting we'll hold, and then this is the meeting we'll hold if we need it. So maybe it's the second Thursday that we hold, and then if we need the other one, then we hold that additional meeting per month.
And then our direction from you on if that's the direction we go is we will act as though we're going to have 12 meetings or 1 meeting a month, But if we need to, we'll
Yeah.
keep the other one on there. And then you'll keep it on, and we'll
And
try
then
to
we'll
cancel it
keep-
earlier if we
Then
can.
we'll keep all the meetings on the calendar, knowing that the second Thursday is the one that would be held.
Actually, really, that's a really good idea. You just literally call one an optional, and then normally we should know at the second meeting whether or not we need the next one that month. So really,
I would think so.
2 weeks in advance, we probably know. And so everyone, from the public perspective, so there's some consistency there. If we can convey that, so you just know that second one is always sort of decided in the second week, whether or not you're going to meet in the,
Okay.
what is it, third, fourth week, whatever that is.
Commissioner Anderson, thoughts?
Just this, we've already have this cancellation on January 16th. So I think that there's at least one other month in the course of this year, as I looked at the schedule, that we only have one meeting scheduled. So what we're really talking about here is 10.
Yeah.
And then if we consider those optional, then c'est la vie. But my guess is we'll do 4 or 5 of those. And the only thing I would suggest is that we have as much notice as possible
Yeah.
on that basis. Just for scheduling and planning makes it a lot easier.
Did you have something else?
I had some initial concerns about scheduling only once a month because of the clock, whether we are on the clock on a particular issue and needed to deal with something. But if we use Commissioner Brindle's idea of having all the meetings, this off week from the council meetings, and have them scheduled twice a month, but know that the first meeting, that first Thursday meeting is an optional meeting, and the second one is the meeting that we will indeed hold. I mean, that seems like you can still manage the clock that way.
From a public meeting schedule perspective, you won't see any difference in the two, right? We'll produce a schedule that looks like the second option here. But in terms of how we manage that schedule, we will take care to think of them as the major meeting and the minor meeting, or the optional meeting, and give you as much as possible in terms of time notice about whether we need to do the optional meeting or not.
The other thing I was concerned about was, from the development community standpoint, they may be on a clock, if they're purchasing land or they have some other tentative timetable that we would want to be sensitive to. I don't know what that would be right now, but that sometimes could occur too. But if we use this method where we have one firm meeting, the second Thursday, and then we have or it would be the fourth Thursday. And the second Thursday is optional. You can still manage that around that problem too.
Okay.
Okay. And then,
So that would be schedule, then we would want you to act on the option, we'll call it option B, the 2 meetings a month, and we will manage them like that going forward.
all right. Is there a motion to approve the 2020 HRA meeting schedule, setting it at twice a month, on a twice a month basis?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
And a motion second to approve the 2020 HRA meeting schedule as described. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then Director Neal, any other comments?
None for me.
All right. HRA commissioners, any comments? All
Yes.
right. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
I did have a question for Mr. Newendorf, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance. Commissioner Fisher was asking about 7200 France, and I in my notes, I just want to do a little further drill down on that, because I know there's just been so much energy expended there and a lot of conversation. So is it simply a matter of financing? Are you familiar with the area market study? Was that an issue in there? How did this, where are we here?
Sure. So we don't have a lot of detail on this, but the developer did start asking questions about cost cutting. They heard that from several financiers, that just the price to build that project in that configuration was higher than most financiers were willing to support. There were concerns about the architectural, the high cost of delivering a better piece of architecture. There was concerns about the cost to build all the public improvements, the public space, the public parking, there was questions about just how much public space was there. It doesn't create revenue for them. And this body did approve the use of tax increment financing to help offset that. We did work hard to try to secure 2 grants to help support that. But despite those efforts, the private markets were still concerned that the construction cost was just too high to fund. So the developer, they're weighing their options. They didn't give us more detail than what I just shared. But staff certainly raised concerns about delivering a lesser project. As a city council, there was so much debate about what the best thing was for that site, what was the right thing, how much is too much, how much public benefit should there be. To go through the cost cutting that the lenders were looking for would require, some significant rethought on the site. Right now both buildings are largely vacant. One has been condemned for structural purposes, so the developer will come back. Something will happen there. But so far we haven't seen anything or been given any tips as far as what direction they might be going, other than to be clear that in this configuration the project at this point can't be financed, and so the timeline is on hold.
Okay, so we have a TIF district with no project, essentially.
That's correct. Yeah, we created the TIF district this summer. It is supposed to start collecting revenue in 2023.
Okay.
So there's always the 5-year rules to do something there. So my recommendation is to keep the TIF district in place. But we also worked hard and negotiated an extensive TIF agreement. That is good for the one project that was approved. So if they need changes to that project, they'd have to approach the City Council and Planning Commission regarding site plans. They would reapproach this body to renegotiate any use of TIF on the site.
Okay. Then I didn't see any reference to Pentagon North here on the project update. And I know that's been, well, there's a TIF district there as well, and no real project, although those buildings are being updated at this time. Do you have a status on any of that?
Yeah, I don't have, yes and no, I don't have a detailed status, but so each of those remaining buildings on the north side of 77th are being remodeled and released for business use. So they've, I don't know the exact status of the square footage that's available versus leased. They generally don't share that with us. But they're moving forward just to stabilize what's there. I know they've been reaching out to larger employers, to smaller employers, working to release that space at a modest price. But as far as the use of tax increment, the clock has expired for the north side of the street. They would have had to have secured approvals, including any kind of TIF contractual obligation last summer, and that is no longer possible for that district.
Okay, good. They, by sprinklering those buildings, they've got a significant investment there at this time, so I hope it works out for them.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, we stand adjourned.